angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV.
It's the holiday season, a time when we remember the most important, the most significant birth in all of history. But do we really know the man who was born on that day? Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert, in studio with my wife and best friend, Sharon K. Gilbert, and the co-author of a new book with the rather audacious title, I, Jesus, an autobiography as told to Dr. William Welty, and our guest, the chairman of the board of Koinonia Institute, Dr. Chuck Missler. Chuck, welcome.
It's nice to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
One of the arguments that we periodically hear from professing Christians today, as we in our nation have political struggles over certain social issues, is that Jesus never said anything about X in the New Testament.
And those are just lies. Not only did he say those things, but if he was here and you heard him say that, you would lock him up as a lunatic. The statements he made are so extreme that in our culture, you can't even relate to the language. He claimed to be God. So either he knew he wasn't God, so he's a liar, or he wasn't but thought he was. He's a lunatic. Or the other alternative, if he is who he said he was, that he's Lord. And I think the truth of the matter is, I think even most Christians don't have a grasp of who he really is. Not only did he create the universe, he's the one that keeps it on track. And when you study the anthropic principle, it isn't just the incredible probabilities that have to conspire for life, obviously. Those probabilities, 1 part in a million precision, have to be maintained. And so that whole analysis, I don't want to get into physics here, but you get into that, it's staggering to realize he's the one responsible. So they need to understand who he really is.
Now, many of these topics are subjects that where people will claim Jesus didn't say anything about this topic or that topic.
They're just uninformed.
They're drawing a big line that divides the Old Testament and the God of the Old Testament from Jesus in the New Testament, and ignoring everything in the Old Testament.
Wonderful. There is a Bible study in the Bible that you can find 6 times.
Really?
And that what the Bible study, it presents Jesus Christ entirely from the Old Testament scriptures. See, in the Bible, when so-and-so showed them from the scriptures, realize that when they say scriptures, they mean the Tanakh, the Old Testament. And so the presentation they gave was from the Old Testament. Stephen's presentation, Acts 7, was a recap of that whole thing too. So the point is, in fact, it's even worse than that, because in the first century, if you were a believer and you wanted to worship about Passover and do it on Passover, the 14th of Nisan, by definition that's when it is, you were designated by a special term. You were called a quartodecimans, that's Latin for 14, for the 14th of Nisan. It was a term that if you were accused of that, you would be excommunicated from the church. The early church became so anti-Semitic, they were trying to separate themselves from the Jewish roots. They misunderstood this whole idea that the Jews were the Christ killers.
Yeah, it was the Romans, the Gentiles, who actually put him up there. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's obviously a whole other error. But the point is, presenting Jesus Christ entirely that's one of the things we encourage our students to do. And you can do that with a very interesting little guideline, a few verses. But to present Jesus Christ entirely from the Old Testament, it's an important exercise. And by the way, it always seems to work. And so...
well, he was represented in the desert when Moses had to lift up a serpent during the time when the Hebrews were...
Numbers 21, the brazen serpent's a good example, And that's an interesting example because that was planted in Numbers 21. It has no meaning, no apparent meaning. There's no explanation of why did God use that weird symbol in Numbers 21. A brass serpent on a pole? You got to be kidding. It isn't until you get to John chapter 3 that Jesus explains it. As Moses raised the serpent in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be raised up. And from verse 14 of chapter 3, you suddenly realize that plant back in Numbers 21 was God's deliberate plant. And there's hundreds of those throughout the scripture, by the way. And what's interesting, once you discover those, it demonstrates that the Bible is supernatural. Because not only are they in there, and they had to have their origin from outside the dimensionality of time. And only God knows the end from the beginning. He uses that as his way of authenticating the message. And so...
Jesus in the Old Testament, we're told in John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
And
so Jesus was there during creation.
And he says the volume of the book is written of me. In Psalm 40, verse 8. And so one of the richest things you can do is to present Jesus entirely from the Old Testament on the one hand. And yet, many of the most controversial aspects of Jesus' future isn't just in the Old Testament, it's in the New. When Gabriel announced the birth to Mary, he told her that her child would sit on the throne of David. And the throne of David did not exist back then.
That's right.
Rome ran things. And yet, if you take your Bible seriously, you know that Jesus has yet to take the throne of David. Around Christmas, we always, in your Christmas cards, you'll have Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, for unto us a son is given. And he goes on, and the government shall be on his shoulder. Everybody thinks those are synonyms. I have another discovery about hermeneutics that over the 65 years I've studied, I've had to revise my view many times as I learned. But I noticed every time I had to revise my views, it was in the direction of taking it more seriously than before. I raised my hermeneutic, if you will. And so the child was born in Bethlehem. The son was given at Golgotha. See, so I don't believe they're synonyms. When two words are synonymous, they mean almost the same thing. Watch out for almost, because hidden behind that will be a discovery. Example, Rahab and the spies. These spies she sheltered and so forth. And she tells them, because she's helping them, she says, don't go back, don't discover your camp. Go hide in the mountains. And we'll let you out the door, we're on the wall, we'll lay down a cord, let you out, and you head for the mountains. When they speak of the cord, they use the word hebel, which can mean cord, but the word can also mean pain, suffering, trauma. Hebel has a double meaning. Well, 2 verses later, they say, okay, fine, you have your family gather, and this with scarlet cord out the window, we'll label it, and we'll protect. When we attack the Jericho, we'll protect you. When they speak of that same cord, they don't use the word hebel. They use the word tikva. Tikva is a Hebrew word that can mean cord or line. It also can mean hope. Ha Tikva is the national anthem of Israel.
Oh my.
Between the use of Hebel by Rahab and the use of Tikva, Rahab says, how long are they to be up in the mountains?
Oh my.
3 days.
Oh my.
Why did she say 3 days? I don't know. Did she 4, 2, who cares? She said 3 days. Because, and I always visualize the Holy Spirit with a smile on his face. There are 3 days between the Hebel of Golgotha and the tikva of the empty tomb. 3 days.
That's remarkable.
That's beautiful.
Now, there are people that say, Chuck, you're making something out of nothing. I don't think so. You either see or you don't. But the higher you place your hermeneutic on the scriptures, the more those reveal these things can. If you don't, you miss those. You follow me? I'm convinced there's dozens of these yet to be discovered. They're evidences of design, evidences within the text that it was designed letter by letter, word by. Oh, in fact, because we now have discovered all these computer codes, I don't mean the nonsense that's promoted, I mean the more serious stuff. We also discover something else. There are properties to the text that evaporate if you change one letter. The ELSs are of that nature. That means not only did God give Moses the Torah, he gave it to him letter by letter. He gave, that was the origin of language, despite what you read in some of the so-called scholastic things. Anyway, I'm proud of it.
And not one jot or tittle
She'll pass away.
pass away before all is fulfilled.
Oh, yeah.
Even the punctuation, the tiny little diacritic marks
Exactly
are
right.
important.
Exactly right.
I want to circle back to what you said earlier about Jesus. Basically, we've got 3 choices in interpreting his words about himself. He was either a liar, a lunatic, or he is the Lord.
Yes.
What claims did he make about himself, and did the people who heard his words understand what he was saying?
Some of them did, and some of them didn't. And that was. In fact, one of the questions the disciples ask him, "Why do you speak in parables?" He answers that in Matthew chapter 13, so that hearing they won't hear. In other words, he spoke in parables to hide the truths, not to reveal them. And that becomes as a shock, and I hope that shocks our listeners, because you need to go back and read Matthew 13, where this issue comes up, and he explains it quite clearly. And that shocks many, many people, because it got to the point where not only did he speak in parables, in public he only spoke in parables. It was his way of confining the truth to his own. Yeah.
There were there are those today, some liberal scholars, even those who liberal Bible scholars, who claim that Jesus never made a claim of godhood.
I have to apologize here. I stumble at the way the left manages vocabulary. We call them liberals. That's a term that they've been able to pawn off on us. They're not liberal. They're intolerant unless you agree with them. They have an agenda. That agenda is to separate us from our heritage. There is a word for that. It's not liberal. It's subversive. In other words, these people who, the so-called higher critics of the German traditions and stuff, those were all attacks, satanically driven attacks, I believe. Anyway, I interrupted your question.
Well, the point was, though, that what claims did Jesus make about himself regarding his divinity?
There's 32 of them in there, sorry. That first of all, that he is the God that created Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Bereshit bara Elohim. And by the way, the word Elohim, you know enough Hebrew to know that that's a plural.
Right.
Exactly.
Masculine nouns, and I am, and so forth, is a plural. It's interesting that every place the word Elohim is used, it's an error. It's used as a singular. The word is plural. Elohim is a plural. And by the way, something most people don't realize, do you know that in Hebrew how many it takes to make a plural? 3. Not 2.
Not 2.
They had a single and a dual, and then a plural.
It's as if in English we said we is,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
or they is, instead of they are.
Yeah. Well, the only place it shows up, the dual shows up in English is both. All my friends came over last night, both of them. I mean, it tells you there were 2, not 3. You follow me?
Yeah.
So, but the point I'm getting at is that Jesus claimed to be Elohim, or Yahweh. You can take any one of the uses of it and so forth, but he claimed to be that. Before Abraham was, I am.
I am.
And the whole Gospel of John is built around 7 discourses, 7 miracles, 7 discourses, 7 I am statements.
Seven,
They all
seven,
fit.
seven.
They all fit furniture of the tabernacle.
And here at Christmas time, we tend to think of Jesus as this baby. And the world loves to present that picture of Jesus as this baby. But the truth is, he's not a baby. He is
Not anymore.
No. No, he is not, and he is coming back.
Yep.
So can you tell us where he talks about coming back and what that means to the world that's waiting?
Well, it's very, very interesting. It's amazing what you can learn if you study these things carefully.
And you're talking about the 7 letters to the
7 letters,
churches
7
in the
churches.
book of Revelation.
There is a phrase that closes each one. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches, plural. It's interesting, in the first 3 letters, that closing phrase, which ends the letter, is followed by a promise to the overcomer. There's a promise to the overcomer in all 7, but in the first 3, the promise is like a PS, a postscript. Okay? In the last 4 letters, the promise to the overcomer is in the body of the letter. Now, someone say, what do you do? Well, if nothing else, it tells you there's something different about the first 3 letters and the last 4, a subtlety there. Then when you examine them more carefully, you discover the first 3 letters don't include an explicit mention of his return. The last 4 do. That catches our attention. You follow me? And there is a diagram, I think, in the book that deals with all of this, but there's an architectural subtlety you pick all the way up there. Every one of these have a promise to those that repent or do better and so forth, except the last one. The last one, it doesn't have a promise to the group. It has a promise that's misused by many evangelists. A promise to the promise to the overcomer is to the individual. I stand at the door and knock. He's outside the church trying to get in. He's knocking on the door. If any man will open the door, and I will come in and sup with him. It's an individual exception. It actually becomes an indictment of the total package.
And those in Laodicea were blind.
I know your
He
actions
mentions
that you were
yeah.
neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold nor hot. But since you are lukewarm and neither hot or cold, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. Look, I am standing at the door and knocking. See, he's outside. If anyone listens to my voice, the promise goes not to the group, to an individual.
And that famous painting is up in many churches. And I would venture to guess that many who see the painting have no idea where it's from or what it really means.
If anyone listens to my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. And on he goes. So each one has a name, and that name characterizes the period for its very reasons. Ephesus was the darling, first love, and so forth. Smyrna was myrrh or death, and so forth. Pergamos was the mixed marriage. That's what Satan couldn't accomplish by persecution.
Right.
He did by marrying the world.
Corruption from within.
Pergamos. And then, of course, Thyatira is the longest letter for a lot of reasons. Sardis. It's interesting, so the Protestant commentators have a field day with Thyatira because of the Vatican overthrows. Well, if Thyatira is the Vatican, then Sardis must be the Reformation. But Sardis has nothing good said about it.
Oh.
He says, I know that you are known for being alive, but you are dead. It's one of 2 letters that has nothing good said about it. Sardis and Laodicea have nothing good said about it.
Oh, my.
Smyrna and Philadelphia have nothing bad said about it.
Well, and most of us want to, we're part of the Philadelphia group.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
I'm not over here. I'm here.
Yeah. Joe Fost, one of my favorite pastors. Joe Fost is the pastor of Calvary Chapel, Philadelphia, and he has a lot of fun with that, of course. But no, it's interesting that the name of each letter, the theme of each letter, the promises of each letter are all designed with a particular thematic treatment. But they also happen in the order they're laid out. They become a chronicle of the church.
Oh.
And that's spooky.
It is. And again, just a reminder that the Bible, as you put it, is an integrated message system from outside our time domain. The book, I, Jesus, was this written, you and Dr. Welty, with an eye toward educating believers, or would this be something that would make a good Christmas gift to skeptics and atheists?
Oh, no, either, definitely. Simply because it'll correct any misunderstandings they have.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was intended to be a text. It's not voluminous in terms, it goes right at specifics in a well-organized way, and so you can get through it pretty directly. No, it's designed to be a basic text for the Institute, but it's also one that is disturbing enough to arrest the attention of somebody you give it to, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. How does our view, then, our understanding of the nature of Jesus, who Jesus said he was, how does that affect our eternal destiny?
Well, I'll take a quote from Mark Twain. One of my favorite quotes I picked up was from Mark Twain. He says, the two most important days in a person's life is the day he was born and the day he discovers why. And I believe that every one of us that are saved for a specific mission. And the challenge in life is to discover what that mission is. In a large audience, I say, how many of you are saved? And all the hands go up usually. And it says, how many of you are in the full-time ministry? 10% of the hands go up. I said, wait a minute. How many of you are saved? All the hands go up. How many are in the full-time ministry whether you know it or not? And they all sort of squirm. Yeah, okay. So my next question is, how many of you have discovered your calling? And usually less than 10% of the hands go up. And the idea that you have a need to discover what Jesus has called you to do is the key that will unlock your entire life. And by the way, that doesn't presume that your destiny is to become a pastor or a study leader or whatever. That gets into a whole thing about the spiritual entrepreneur.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
That a person, the spiritual entrepreneur is a third path. Most people, when they get serious about Jesus and the Bible, they find themselves in a crossroads. They can they can become an employee of a church or a parachurch, whatever, or they can go to work for one of these groups like YWAM or Campus Crusade, where you can go there and help, but you've got to bring your own support. So you find yourself in a crossroads. You either become an employee with all that implies, or you are on the dole. They all overlook a third option, and the third option is the one that's in the Bible by Paul. See, most people haven't studied Paul. Paul came from a very powerful, wealthy family. He was born as a Roman citizen. Tells you they were wealthy, so forth. What most of us don't know unless we've done our homework, in a Jewish family, the eldest male child had to have a hands-on vocation. No matter how wealthy we were, that wasn't the issue. He still needed to be able to qualify himself with a hands-on vocation. Now, Paul came from Cilicia, which is famous for a kind of cloth made from goat's hair that was very lightweight and waterproof.
Tent making,
So
yes.
it lent itself to tent making. Tent making was a recognized vocation, like gems or any other calling. So Paul happened to be a tent maker. But the point is, he never took donations for himself. He took donations for other ministries, like for the Church of Jerusalem. He brags to the Corinthians and to the Thessalonians, I've been with you several years, never took a penny. He chose to bring to the table his financial independence because he felt he would be more influence in teaching them about being a disciple. So what's interesting, Paul is an example of what I call a spiritual entrepreneur. It turns out there are people that they pay their rent and groceries by their vocation. Electrician, a plumber, a dentist, a whatever. But what they actually are undercover ambassadors for the coming king. Now, what's interesting, these are people then that pay their ministry expenses out of their own pocket. And we've arranged ways that we can split that with them through what we call the Koinonia Parsonage Reserve. We have a mechanism for members of the Institute that go down that path, where they can, it turns out that there's other people that start supporting that, and our pool for that purpose has doubled every 18 months, which means it's growing incredibly quickly.
Wow.
And but the money is always used only for the reimbursement of out-of-pocket ministry expenses. No remuneration. It's a
We need to have him
Historically,
back so we can
yes.
just talk about that.
Yes, because that would be a great topic for a full program, but we are just about out of time.
Okay, good.
The book, I, Jesus, an Autobiography, as told to Dr. William Welty and Dr. Chuck Missler, available from the Skywatch TV store for the list price of $25, but as an added bonus, we'll add this $30 value from the Researcher's Library of Ancient Texts, the Septuagint translation of the Bible, a $30 value, yours when you order I, Jesus from skywatchtvstore.com. Dr. Missler, it's been an honor, and we thank you for your time and for your work.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. I'll be here anytime you want.
Thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV. The holidays are on us, and this Christmas, Skywatch TV can help you give the gift of preparedness to the ones you love.
How better to show your love to your family than to buy something that will help them when their electricity goes out, when everything fails, and we all know that there's a possibility of that happening. This is the time to buy, because if you go to our store, you'll find the Buy This, Get That Free special. And trust me, the Buy This items, they're already discounted, so you're going to save money on that. And you get a wonderful item in addition, free.
That's right. Go to skywatchtvstore.com and look for the Christmas specials. Now, as a news junkie, I'm really excited about some of the crank radios. When times get tough and you need to know what's going on.
Are they just for cranks?
Well, it's perfect for me then, because you can, without batteries, be able to find out exactly what's going on. They're crank radios, including a two-way radio, so you can communicate with friends and family in an emergency.
I think that's incredible. We've got a hand crank radio at home that we use a lot. I hope it never happens, but more than likely the day's going to come. Even if it's just a power outage from a storm, you're going to need something to hear the weather on. We've got seed kits, emergency ration kits, Berkey water filters. I mean, it's all the things you wanted to get for prepping and you wanted to save money, or you want to give to your family members. Now's the time to buy.
And many of those seed kits are heirloom seeds, the kind of things that you don't typically get when you go to the store to buy seeds. Seeds that you can basically, when the plant ripens, you can save some of those seeds and plant them again next year.
You can. It's almost a buy once, have them forever sort of thing, if you just save from year to year. And they're non-GMO.
Exactly. Plenty of other items in the store, including more information, books that tell you about how to prepare and plan for times that are troublesome. And certainly that would describe the age we're living in right now.
Buy this. Get that free. You gotta love it.
Yep. Give the gift of preparedness this holiday season. Skywatch TV, skywatchtvstore.com. And again, Merry Christmas from Skywatch TV.